Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 940 is out, so if you haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Simply put, guys, this is just my kind of chapter. Obviously, people enjoy One Piece in many various ways, but this is the kind of thing that I really look forward to. One thing that's become very apparent since the time skip is the ever-growing complexity of the stories that Oda is telling. Before the time skip, the stories were relatively self-contained, relatively simple, excluding an arc maybe like Water 7. But I really feel as though Oda has been flexing since Zou. And so one of the things that I really enjoy about this is how there's so many different plot threads, so many different things coming together, but when they meet up, when they join, when the story converges, that's just a moment that I really enjoy. And so that's pretty much everything that this chapter was about. It was exposition, but exposition which really moved the story forward and brought together some of the pieces again that was just beforehand we couldn't see were obviously connected. But yeah, let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about Komurasaki. You guys know I made a video just the other day, but in some ways that video is kind of irrelevant now. It didn't age very well. And of course the reason for this is the confirmation that the people that Komurasaki was stealing gold from and ruining lives in the Flower Capital, yeah, they were all bad people. This is something that a lot of people said. This was a very popular thought in the comment section, and honestly, it was something that a lot of us were thinking, but it is finally confirmed, and I wasn't entirely sure beforehand if Oda was really going to drag it out, really going to make us think that these were good people, or leave us the ability to think that, but after a single chapter, there is no longer any room to speculate. Bingo, Bongo, and Bongo are awful humans, and if it was not obvious before, it should be now that Komurasaki is a champion of the poor. But surrounding this confirmation of an idea that many of us already believed was a lot of extra details which really get me hyped up about the future of the story in various ways. The first thing, and this is kind of low-key, I think not a lot of people are going to have this thought, but I got it. At the very least, Bingo, Bongo, and Bongo were all allowed to live in the Flower Capital because they help fill Orochi's purse. However, in order for them to legally, quote, do what it is that they were doing, they had to actually bribe officials. So technically what they were doing is illegal. It's just that the whole system is corrupt. However, if you are forced to bribe someone in order to keep your position, it suggests that there is some kind of law enforcement, even if it is not very good. And I mean law enforcement that not only cares whether or not you are killing people that are loyal to the Shogun, but actually representing as a decent citizen. I had this thought before, and I'm going to go ahead and share it again. I am not entirely sure that Orochi is aware of just how bad it is in Wano. Now, I'm not saying that he is a good person, but I am saying that there's a possibility that he is blissfully unaware of all of the wrongs and atrocities that are committed. And I'm beginning to think that there's a possibility that it is just his system and how he's chosen to operate the country that has lended towards corruption, but in a way that maybe he wouldn't actually want. Because as he said to Cypherpole, and I do believe that he actually believes this, he thinks that the people of Wano are happy. So just to make a quick theory about this while we are here, I'm just wondering, so Wano in the past was called the Country of Gold, and I feel as though Orochi deems it important for the country itself to acquire wealth that maybe at some point in time it lost. So Orochi's belief is something along the lines of make Wano great again. So in the pursuit of making Wano great again, he rewards greatly those who acquire vast amounts of wealth. But maybe he doesn't entirely realize that the way that people are getting this money is by extorting most of Wano's citizens themselves. So this is why people need to be bribed. And the culture facilitates those who want to accept bribes because, again, money is so crucially important. If you don't have enough of it, then you get kicked out to the town of leftovers. But yeah, as of right now, I'm not entirely sure about this, but I do want to throw it out there, and if ever we get a detail such as Orochi hasn't left the Flower Capital in years, then something like this might truly be justified. And it could lead to him at some point in the story finding a way to be redeemed. Obviously, after he is defeated, I would expect. But anyway, let's go back to Komurasaki, and as my last video, we asked the question, what exactly was she doing with the gold that she was taking from these wealthy individuals in the Flower Capital, and it seems very, very apparent to me now. She is giving it to Toko, who is giving it to Yasu. Or if we just want to cut out the middleman here, maybe Komurasaki is giving it directly to Yasu. I'm just telling you guys, I think that there is no way that Toko makes enough money, or should be making enough money in order to feed the entire town of Ebisu. Not only feed, I should say, but he also buys them medicine. Yasu has way, way, way more than I would expect given what Toko's job is. So my guess is that Komurasaki works for him, or works with him. That was where all the gold that she spent went. But I think that this arrangement in and of itself lends to question, I mean, how did this come to be? How does Komurasaki know Yasu? And I'm just going to take a shot in the dark here. I think this is the best guess that we have right now. We know that Kawamatsu disappeared from Komurasaki's life around when she was 13 years old, which would mean she was still relatively adolescent and had nobody around to protect her or take care of her. My guess is Yasu assumed this role. So from this chapter, I felt like there was one line that really lends towards this idea being possible. It says, Yasu sure does enjoy taking care of people, even if they are troublesome. It just seems like the kind of guy who would find a random girl on the street and then take care of her. And at the same time, Komurasaki has shown an affinity for the poor. In my opinion, it seems pretty likely that she is stealing money from the wealthy in order to give it to the entire town of Ebisu. So she also needs, in the story, some reason to connect with Ebisu, and it could be through Yasu. Now, of course, this doesn't explain how she ended up in the Flower Capital as what it appears to be Kiroshiro's subordinate, but maybe that happened afterwards. But one thing I do want to point out to you guys that I found to be somewhat interesting is, now that Yasu's situation has been somewhat clarified, we actually saw him interact with Kiroshiro's lackeys when he first met up with Zoro, and he doesn't seem to be fond of them, which I guess could be used as further evidence that Kiroshiro is not an ally and not a friend, even if Komurasaki may be somewhat loyal to him. But yeah, Yasu, let's just talk about Yasu for a moment. He went from somebody I was mildly intrigued by to one of the very most interesting characters in Wano in one chapter. In my last video, we talked about the Witching Hour boy, but I'm just going to throw Yasu's name as also a possible suspect for the identity of the Witching Hour boy. I'm not saying that it is him, I'm just saying that it could be. And certainly, through his actions, if what we've speculated here is correct, and he's sort of in league with Komurasaki, distributing wealth and food and medicine that was stolen to the citizens of Ebisu, it would match up with the motives of the Witching Hour boy, or at the very least could imply that he has a connection with that individual. But I would say that aside from who he is and what his past may have been, the most interesting aspect of Yasu is the fact that he seems to know much more than anybody would expect of him. He talks to Kanjuro and Shinobu as though he knows them, and after the conversation, the Strats are like, but we still don't understand, who that guy is or how you know them. And both Kanjuro and Shinobu was like, well, we don't know him either, but we didn't want to be rude. Add this to the fact that Yasu was in possession of one of the cards distributed within the Flower Capital and seemed to know almost all of the rumors from within the capital, but he is from the town of Ebisu. They wouldn't have let him in. At least, they wouldn't have let him in through the door. So the first thing that I feel relatively confident about is Yasu is an adept spy. When we first meet him, he is in this pub, I guess, with subordinates of Kiroshiro. That's where he happens to meet Zoro. My guess is that he was listening in to all of their conversations, which is in line with how we first ended up meeting up with the Straw Hats in Ebisu, as he sort of walked inside the door and said, "What's up? I happened to overhear your conversation. You spoke too loudly." I'm just going to throw this out here, guys. Based on this particular skill set, I would not be too surprised if in his former life Yasu happened to be a ninja or shinobi. And maybe he really is the Witching Hour boy. Again, guys, we have to ask the question of how exactly he obtained the rebellion note. It doesn't seem like that was something that was handed out in the town of leftovers, which would mean that he would have had to have stolen it from someone, pickpocketed them, or some other skill like that. I'm also not going to rule out the possibility that Yasu frequently actually visits the Flower Capital somehow incognito, in order to overhear all the various conversations going on within the streets. So also add him into the possible suspects that I have for actual living mythical creatures within Wano. We talked about the Kitsune, they can shapeshift. Tanuki, they can shapeshift. I'm just gonna throw it out there. The Tanuki one is of particular interest to me because we've actually had an explicit mention of them through the sumo wrestler earlier in the arc. Would be crazy if that amounted to much more. And don't forget that at the moment we are being led to believe, we are supposed to assume, it isn't guaranteed, but we are supposed to assume the Kawamatsu is an actual kappa. And Osuru could be a crane. And Komurasaki's story itself mirrors that of the Kitsune. But yeah, at this point Yasu has got me super hyped and I'm excited to see where exactly the story goes with him. One thing though that we can say about him right now is that it's clear that his character is inspired by the Hyotoko mask of Japan festivals. That's just what his character is based on. You can Google it if you would like. Hyotoko. That word roughly translates to fireman. And the legend behind it is relatively interesting. It was about a boy who was essentially born being able to do nothing, having essentially no skills. Except for conveniently the ability to produce gold from his navel or belly button. So in Japan, after somebody has died, you hang a Hyotoko mask above your fireplace and it is supposed to bring you good fortune. And in other parts of Japan, Hyotoko is regarded as the god of fire and is sometimes given the ability to blow out fire or consume it. I'm not entirely sure. There isn't actually a lot to find, but abilities relating to fire. So if you break down the name Hyotoko, on one part you have Toko, who happens to be the daughter of Yasu, and on the other hand you have Hyo, old man Hyo, who also has seemingly fire, beard and hair. I just wonder if there's a connection there. But yeah, all of this is food for thought. The chapter actually started with I felt like a really ominous flashback to Law talking to the Straw Hats and Shinobu. I won't forgive you for doubting my comrades. Alliances without trust might as well not exist. There is no way I can leave this in your hands. What's funny about this is I talked about this in the last chapter, but I got several comments essentially saying, oh, of course, anytime there's anything mysterious going on, JB's first one to mention, oh, somebody is the traitor, somebody's going to betray someone, but this really seems like something that is going somewhere. What I want you guys to know is the fact is that Law is not a Straw Hat, and although he may be indebted to Luffy, and although he may be traveling with them, and although they may have the same objectives, they would never do any sort of operation the same way. That was made explicitly clear earlier in the arc when essentially Law tells the Straw Hats to abandon everybody, but Sanji cannot do it. Law is all about being rational and improving the odds or percentage of success. The Straw Hats pass somebody who is being wronged, they will do something, even if it may be a detriment to their own objectives. Usopp specifically commented that Law's decision-making process is not very Luffy-like, and that is just a fact. So I'll be honest guys, my impression is that through the course of the events in Wano, Oda is leading towards Law having some massive character growth. And I think that this starts with Law at this moment not caring at all about the plight of the people of Wano and the samurai. For him, they are merely allies to help him defeat Kaido. He only cares about defeating Kaido, and all this other things that are going on, it seems as though are frustrating him. Everything is going wrong, and on top of it, his own subordinates are being thrown under the bus. My opinion, guys, I think that this is leading towards some spicy action. And I do think that it is very poignant and very purposeful that Oda had Law leave just before Yasu comes in and essentially gives them even more subordinates to help in their fight. With the entire village of Ebisu, they are ready to fight. Even if several people are going to die within the week anyway. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that these fighters from Ebisu are going to be game changers. There's going to be some overpowered members among them. That's a hard sell. There may be some capable fighters. But the entire point of this is to illustrate that the Straw Hats way is the right way. It seems so roundabout and so superfluous to help Wano when all you really want to do is defeat Kaido and you just, you have the pieces already. But what the Straw Hats do is they acquire more allies no matter where they go by doing things like this, by helping people that on the surface doesn't seem like it would be very useful to. And so I guess that this leads us into Udon. Obviously, the big thing after the last couple chapters is, the Kozuki had all of these subordinates lined up who were ready to fight against Orochi, but now they're all being rounded up. But amidst all of this, with seemingly the plan failing, they're acquiring more allies, including, the village of Ebisu, and most likely all of the prisoners in Udon. All of this will undoubtedly pay off. Speaking specifically about the town of leftovers in Ebisu, maybe there are not a lot of strong members among them, but who they are connected to could be just as viable. I mean, I could literally see almost all of Wano rising up with the Kozuki. Only a very select few remained loyal to the Kozuki over 20 years, and only a very select few are allowed to live within the capital, profiting from Orochi's system's corruption. That leaves a large number of individuals who are recruitable. But yeah, talking more in depth about what was going on with Luffy in this chapter, he is continuing to train under Grandpa Hyo, and a question that I got on Twitter was, how exactly is Queen allowing this to happen? I think we already know that by the time that Luffy's training is complete, he will have mastered the Haki Blast technique. And that will end up mattering in this arc. But my justification, ignoring plot convenience, what this is certainly would be, is 1, Queen doesn't think that it will matter and that Luffy still wouldn't be able to defeat him. 2, even if Luffy could defeat him, he couldn't defeat Kaido, which would make that irrelevant. Keep in mind that I don't think that they are aware yet that the entire crew is there. So Luffy is a lone wolf. And 3, the objective is to make Luffy a subordinate. Queen, I think, is relying on the fact that at some point in time, Kaido or himself is going to break Luffy's will. So Luffy getting stronger isn't necessarily a bad thing. Makes for a stronger subordinate. And free entertainment on top of it. But yeah, this leads us into the very end of the chapter. I just want to throw in there that there was a Goldie Roger mention cited. So I think that we all knew that at some point in time Roger visited Wano. That just seemed something that would be obvious, but now it is confirmed. Keep in mind that he actually met Odin on Whitebeard's ship as a pirate. But I think it's pretty clear that there's been a poneglyph in Wano forever, and Roger would have had to have found that. And I think that another thing about this that I found to be personally important was the reveal to Grandpa Hyo that Kaido was a pirate. This is something that Orochi and Kaido are trying to keep very, very quiet. And if the Straw Hats build up subordinates of essentially all of Wano, and they all discover that Kaido is not their god, but is in fact a giant pirate and an invader, that could really matter. And so it was around this time that Caribou again made his entrance into the story. We saw him a little bit earlier, and now that's actually going somewhere. We knew that Raizo had stolen a key he thought was Luffy's, but it was not. It was in fact Caribou's. So I'm just going to head this off before there's any discussion about this at any point in time. Okay, not now, not ever will I argue that Caribou will join the Straw Hat crew. That is not happening. It is not viable. Even as a member of the fleet, that is a questionable proposition. Caribou is a liar and a coward. He is just saying what he thinks that he needs to say in order to get out alive. But I do think that Caribou is going to play a role in the arc as an ally. And I do think that there are big things in store for him, specifically at the end. Guys, if you guys remember, Caribou is the one who knows that Shirahoshi is Poseidon. It was specifically noted that he intended on telling someone, a very specific someone, but we don't know who this someone is. This Wano arc is going to be crazy. It's going to be huge. We expect a lot of different players here, and I think that by the end of this arc, whoever Caribou intended on telling is going to show up, and Caribou is going to tell him. To cut straight to the chase here, my old theory about Caribou and who it is that he wanted to tell, I theorized that person was Blackbeard. I'm not going to go into the hows or whys in this video, but just Blackbeard was my suspect, was my guy. And I also think that Blackbeard is going to make an appearance in this arc as well in order to capitalize on the calamity and potentially steal a third devil fruit. So I think Caribou is going to tell Blackbeard. Additionally, it's possible that Caribou just hasn't had the opportunity to reveal this information to Kaido yet. Kaido was the person that he wants to tell, and through the sequence of events, somehow it ends up that in order to save his own skin, he tells Kaido about the identity of Poseidon. I'm not sure how exactly that story would play out, given this is kind of where we expect Kaido's journey to end, but it is also a possibility. But yeah, aside from this, I hold a lot of weight for Caribou specifically mentioning an individual that he would like to tell. I think that eventually he will tell this individual, and as for who this could be, I can't imagine who it would be that would make sense that could actually do something in the future of the story aside from Kaido or Blackbeard. He could, of course, tell anybody, including people, members of the world government, Cypher Pole, or the Marines. That would also be significant, but I couldn't imagine that those are the people that he intended to tell. Just keep your heads up about this. I'm imagining that it's going to go somewhere within Wano. But yeah, the last two things that I want to mention before we end this video. Again, you might think that I'm looking for reasons to suspect Kyoto Shiro, but really this is just honestly my thoughts, guys. Hyo specifically says in this chapter that all of the anger in this country has been festering here, that all of the individuals that are in this Udon prison are not typical murderers or thieves. They were arrested for rebellion against Orochi. He says specifically the former Yakuza bosses that supported the Wano country from the shadows are also here. Everybody is here. The current Yakuza boss is Kiroshiro. If he has been supporting the Wano country from the shadows, he has been doing a better job than literally everybody else. It honestly may turn out that he is a good guy, but I would bet money that nobody would know that. His intentions would be so secretive that only he would be aware of them, and maybe Komurasaki as well. And so lastly, I just feel like it's important to point out, I don't exactly know how yet, but for some reason Hyo points Kawamatsu and says he is the person that we need to break out at all costs, which has me incredibly hyped. I'm not exactly sure what he could do that would make Hyo deem him that important. And to end this chapter, we can see Big Mom and company have finally arrived. She is hungry, she is sleepy. I'm so hungry, I'm so sleepy. Oda wants us to believe that a raid is incoming. I'm not going to go so far as to say that I expect it to happen. I'm kind of on the fence at this point in time, but it's a real question. But yeah, guys, that is all I had to say today. As always, I am curious as to what you guys thought about it, whether you noticed something from the chapter that I may have missed. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.